Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with coverage of round 4 of Tata Steel 2021. Let's first look at the standings after the third round. We had 5 leaders after round 3, Harikrishna, Carlsen, Giri, Caruana and Grandelius on +1. Also 5 players on 50%, 3 players on -1 and Alexander Donchenko got on the scoreboard in round 3. After 2 losses he scored his first draw. These were the pairings of round 4, Vachela Grave against Anton Guijarro, Tari Firouzja, Van Foreest against Carlsen, Donchenko Wojtaszek, Dudagiri, Harikrishna Caruana and Yipsipenko against Grandelius. And we're going to look first at the battle between 2 of the 5 leaders, Harikrishna with white against Caruana with black. And here we see both players at the board. We see Harikrishna's face and Caruana, we see him from the back. Let's get into the game. It is the 19th of January 2021 and we have ace Ruy Lopez, the Spanish opening on the board. Cancelling from white, and here knight takes e4 is the open Spanish, but b5 was played by Fabiano Caruana. Bishop back to b3 and then bishop c5, the Archangel's variation of the Ruy Lopez. a4, rook b8, c3, d6, d4, kicking the bishop back to b6, and then a5, kicking the bishop back even further. Can you not take that pawn? Taking with the bishop is clearly bad because of d5, and the knight will have to go, and then the bishop will be unprotected. Can you not take it with the knight? Knight takes a5, it has been played before at master level. It is not very good for black because of rook takes a5, bishop takes a5, and then the e5 pawn is in trouble. D takes, the queens come off the board, black loses his castling rights, and knight takes e5 with more than enough compensation for the exchange for white. Both players knew this, and after 10 a5, the bishop was dropped back to a7. h3. And can you take that unprotected pawn on e4? That's a question both white and black constantly have to ask each other in this opening. Not really, because then there is bishop d5 and there are 2 of black's pieces hanging. So after h3 you cannot take on e4 and bishop b7 was played by Caruana. Rook e1, Caruana castled, bishop e3, and can you take on e4 now? No, still not, because there is d5. And if you take on e3, rook takes, then both knights are hanging again. White wins a piece. So after bishop e3, e takes d4 was played, c takes d4, knight e7, knight bd2 and knight g6. Instead of knight g6, can you take on e4 now? Again, that move had to be looked at by both players. It's still not good because of knight takes e4, bishop takes e4, and then a very nice move bishop g5. And there are some tactical problems for black. This is also good for white. And that's why in this position knight g6 was played by Caruana. d5, trying to shut the bishop on b7 out of the game. The bishops were swapped, and c6, attacking white center, trying to bring bishop b7 back to life. D takes, bishop takes. The drawback for black is that this pawn on d6 is now a weakness, but his bishop has got back into the game. Bishop c2, rook e8, rook e1, bishop b7, b4, knight h5 and rook a3. Nice maneuver from Harikrishna. In some variations this rook performs an important defensive role on the third rank. Knight h2 f4, and that's a very nice square for the knight. Black has active pieces and white's pieces are struggling for good squares, as Grandmaster Naroditsky explained in the live broadcast. Another factor is that this position is easier to play for black. He has easy improving moves. We'll see queen f6, the rook can go to d8, maybe even to c8. The moves suggest itself for black, while for white it is more difficult to arrange his pieces. But Harikrishna is a very strong grandmaster, and let's see how he maneuvers around. Knight f1, queen f6, knight g3, rook bd8 and rook a2 e3. Harikrishna has found a very nice way of keeping things together, of cementing his position, as Peter Leko called it on the Chess24 broadcast. When you cannot find a way to centralize the rooks on the first rank, Harikrishna shows you can do it this way, over the third rank. The game goes on. Knight e5 from Caruana, improving that knight. Bishop b3. And very interesting here is an observation of Grandmaster Peter Leko. He said that black will need to make sure not to forget about a possible rook f3 with pressure against f7 in the distant future. Yes, that is far away, but Peter Leko had already spotted it. Amazing to find out how those top grandmasters think. g6 from Caruana and knight h2 from Harikrishna. Here black's dream is to play the queen to g5, then play h7, h5, h4 to kick that knight away from g3, and then the queen will give checkmate on g2. That is the plan. And we have h5 as the first move of that plan, but white is not going to just let that happen. He had anticipated this and played knight e2, attacking that knight on f4. Knight c4 was played. Bishop takes, b takes, and there goes that very strong knight of f4. Queen takes, queen c2 and d5. Caruana is opening up the position for the bishop. It's a bishop against knight position. E takes, a pair of rooks was swapped, and bishop takes back on d5. The knight got back into the game. Bishop e6, knight e5, centralizing the knight. Caruana has slightly the better position with bishop against knight with pawns on both flanks, and he has a strong passed pawn on c4, while white's passed pawn is a backward pawn. But Caruana gave away his advantage with queen d4, because now knight takes g6 is possible, a nice shot. If you take the knight, then white will take the bishop, which is then unprotected. Caruana surely had not missed this. He had planned queen d1 check, queen takes, rook takes check, king h2, and now c4, c3. Suddenly it looks very good for black. How to stop that pawn? That pawn is too strong and has to be taken, which costs white a piece. You have to take on c3, but now the rook is no longer attacking the bishop, so black wins a piece by taking on g6. But maybe what Caruana had missed is that white now has rook c6 with a double attack, winning a third pawn for the piece. King f7, defending the bishop, rook takes, and there are no more winning chances for black. 3 pawns for the piece is enough in this position. And we saw a move repetition to finish this game. Rook d2, king g1, and the last move rook d1 check, and the players agreed to a draw. Now let's turn our attention to the game van Foreest against Carlsen. Here's a screenshot from the live broadcast. And we're not going to cover the whole game. This is the position after the 47th move from Carlsen, bishop e7 back to d8. If we do a body count, we see that Carlsen is a pawn up in this endgame of rook and knight versus rook and bishop. He has slight winning chances. At least he has the chance to torture his opponent for many moves. Van Foreest played rook h7, attacking the pawn on h6, and now Carlsen blunders. He played rook d2 with the intention of playing bishop b6 with a lot of pressure against the f2 pawn. But it was a blunder, and let's now look at Van Foreest's face after Carlsen made that move. Staring at his opponent. Has the world champion really blundered, or is there a devilish trick? Well, it turned out that indeed the world champion had given away his advantage with that rook d2 move. What had he missed? Van Foreest can take the pawn, and now the material is equal again. Don't think you can win material with king g5, because then there is knight f3 check, and that leads to an immediate draw. We have a fork, so king takes h6, knight takes d2, and this game will end in a draw. After rook takes h6 you can also play king g7, which is what Carlsen played, but then there is rook takes g6 check, picking up another pawn, and after king h7 it looks that white might lose a piece here, because the knight is attacked, and if the knight moves the rook is hanging, but Knight f3 is possible, and that is maybe the move that Carlsen had missed, which is counter-attacking Black's rook, and the game is a draw straight away. They played on till bare kings. Let's see the remaining moves. Rook takes f2, the desperado, picking up a pawn before the rook gets taken. King takes rook, and we see the bishop and knight also disappear off the board. And the final pawns, so that this game was a draw with 2 bare kings on the board. A missed chance for Carlsen. He might not have won it, but as said, he might have enjoyed torturing his opponent for a long time with a chance to win the game. Carlsen has won many of those endgames in the past. Finally, we're going to look at the game between Tari with white against Harikrishna Firouzja with black. A battle between 2 youngsters. And what does this picture tell us? Well, it tells us that black has 39 seconds left on the clock. Let me show you what happened. The opening was the Caruana, and this is the position after 29. Knight f3 takes g5 from Tari. A crazy position. White's king very exposed, and in fact black was winning here. But as we saw, his clock was ticking down and he had to make 11 more moves before the time control. Firouzja played knight e2 check, and Tari played king g2 and offered a draw. Offering a draw in your opponent's time trouble can be very effective, and with this gesture Harikrishna Firouzja accepted the draw. An anti-climax for the spectators, but the position was drawish anyway. What could have happened was a lot more spectacular. Let's go back 2 moves where we started. White had played knight f3 takes g5, and knight e2 check was played by Firouzja here, but the winning line is bishop e2, but that's not a very logical move. Why would you put the bishop on such a vulnerable square? Well, only when it's winning. It's attacking the rook, and we now see some crazy variations. What happens if the rook takes the knight on f4? Well, then black wins with rook d1 check. King f2, you have to protect the queen because the queen is attacked on e3, and then rook f1 check, trying to dislodge the king from protecting the queen. If you take the rook, you lose your queen. So king takes e2 has to be played, and then rook e1 check, and now the king has to take the rook. Queen takes e3 check, not only winning the queen, but it's also a double attack on king and rook, and after king d1, queen takes f4, the dust is settled, and black has the queen for 2 knights and has a winning position. Very nice. Let's go back to the start. We had knight takes g5 and then bishop e2, and we just saw that rook takes f4 does not work. What about saving the rook by playing rook e1? Well, look at this move. Quite incredible. Rook d1 is then a winning move. We're going to sacrifice our queen. White has no choice. Queen takes c5. Rook takes e1 check. King has to go to f2, and then look at this one. Knight d3 check. Forking king and queen, and also importantly, protecting the rook. So the king has to go up the board. Knight takes c5, and black has an extra rook in this position. Mind-blowing stuff, a real engine line of course. Bishop e2 followed by rook d1, not easy to find for a human, especially not in time trouble. So this game, somewhat prematurely, also ended in a draw. And it turned out that all 7 games ended in a draw in round 4. A peaceful last round just before the rest day. Which means nothing has changed in the tournament tables. Everybody has just got half a point extra, and we still have 5 leaders, followed by 5 players half a point behind. Round 5 will be played on Thursday the 21st of January, and we'll see Grandelius Vachier-Lagrave, Caruana Yesipenko, Giri Harikrishna, Wojtasek Duda, Carlsen Donchenko, Firouzja van Foreest, and Anton Gigaro against Tari. I will be here after the round to tell you what happened. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel, and please leave a comment. I will read them all and I will reply to them all. If you liked the video, it would be great if you could share it on social media by clicking the share button on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, on Twitter and on Facebook. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.